Okay, so it's my pleasure to be here today to talk to you about Singularity containers. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm Dave Godlove. I'm the engineering coordinator at Sylabs. So I'll just kind of jump into it with a little brief introduction. And I think after the introduction, we're going to have about a 20-minute session during which we're going to have Q&A. Greg Kurtzer is here, the CEO of Sylabs and the inventor of Singularity. He's going to be here helping to answer your questions. So this is going to be, I think, a really exciting session. So let me just get started. Talk a little bit about Singularity. At this point in time, I think most people are probably familiar with what a Linux container is. So I'm not really going to jump into details about that too much. Maybe it's good to just talk a little bit about who is using Singularity. So obviously you just heard Comet, also Gordon at San Diego Supercomputing is obviously using Singularity, so that's awesome. And then there's a bunch of other centers here that you've probably never heard of. Actually this is just a really small slice of all the people who are using Singularity. Singularity is really widely used throughout HPC. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that. Hold on, sorry. So, apologize, I think I've got two different slideshows going at the same time here. Let me just make sure that I'm using the right slideshow. Apologize for that. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what differentiates Singularity from other container solutions. First off, if you're an administrator, an important point is the security context. Most people are aware of this, but I'll cover this briefly just in a nutshell. So the security of context of Singularity is different from really any other container platform that I'm aware of. And the idea in a nutshell is that you are the same user inside the container as you are outside the container, and then the same privilege escalation model which applies to the kernel then applies to you inside the container. With the one caveat that there's a privilege separation model, which means you can't escalate your privileges. If you enter the container as a non-privileged user, you'll be a non-privileged user inside the container. Another thing that makes Singularity different is the Singularity image format, or SIF. So Singularity containers are just a single file. And this allows us to do a lot of things. It allows you to transfer your container from one place to another really easily, so it makes it really portable, and it makes it really reproducible. And also we can do interesting things with this, like sign and then verify a container later. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. The philosophy of Singularity is integration over isolation. What do I mean by that? Most container solutions try to isolate your container completely from the host system and from other containers. And then if you want to interact with the host system, you have to poke holes in that isolation. Singularity actually starts being integrated, and then if you want additional levels of isolation, you have to build those up. And that makes it easy to do things like run containers with MPI, leverage GPUs on the host system, interact with files on the host system, and so on. And that's a small part of a larger overall philosophy with Singularity, which is to provide a batteries included type of approach. So this means that you don't have to, use Singularity as one piece of a puzzle. It's a complete solution for you, allowing you to do things like integrate with MPI, use GPUs. If you want to use the high-speed interconnects that exist on your HPC system, it's rather easy to do that with Singularity. And it also has seamless integration with batch schedulers. Okay, so that's a little taste of what Singularity is like. We just released a new version of Singularity on October 8th. This is the first version, which was completely redesigned by Sylabs. We're really excited about it. So let me tell you about some of the new features. First off, Singularity 3.0 represents a complete rewrite of the source code, and now it's written primarily in Go. And what this is going to allow us to do is integrate with a lot of existing tools which are already out there, which are written in Go. Turns out that the container ecosystem, the container community writes most of their tools in Go. SIF is now the default container format. So this is a really extensible and flexible file format. It's going to allow us to do a lot of new things in the future. But right out of the gate, one of the things that it allows us to do is sign and then verify containers. So now you can create a container. Within Singularity, you can create and manage PGP keys. You can sign that container. Then you can push it up to our container library, along with pushing your PGP key, your public PGP key, up to the key store. And then one of your colleagues can download the container that you created, verify it with that key, and now you've got an unbroken chain of trust from the author of the container all the way to the end user. So this is a new level of trust and security for containers. We also have a new cloud offering called the Remote Builder. So now let's say that you don't have root on the system where you want to build your containers. That's fine. Just type Singularity build -- remote without root access. Your container is going to go up to the cloud. It's going to be built there. All the output is going to echo back to your terminal, so it's going to look like your container is being built locally. And then to the conclusion, it's going to download right back to your local resource. We're also introducing network virtualization through Container Network Interface, or CNI. This is the same group of Go plugins which Kubernetes uses to provide all of their network virtualization. So now you can basically do anything as far as network virtualization goes within Singularity as you can do with Kubernetes. 3.0 introduces fine-grained control over the security context of containers. So now admins can add Linux capabilities to users or revoke those capabilities for them to be able to use specific aspects of a container. Or if you have modules like SE Linux, AppArmor, and SecComp installed in your host system, you can now leverage those within the container as well. And finally, we're also now offering native support for C groups. So if you're using your container outside of the purview of a batch scheduler, and you don't have a way to do things like limit resources, limit CPU or memory or so on, C groups integration is now going to allow you to do that. Oh, and one more thing. It's now easier to run Docker and OCI containers that you build yourself directly from your host system in Singularity. Up till now, I've been speaking about the open source version of Singularity. I want to talk a little bit about Singularity Pro, which is a Sylabs offering and what that is. So I work for Sylabs. Sylabs is the company which is supporting Singularity. First off, Sylabs is fully committed to open source. So everything developed at Sylabs goes right back into the open source offering. You can kind of think of Singularity Pro as being to Singularity what RHEL is to Fedora. So the open source version of Singularity is cutting edge. When you live on the cutting edge, sometimes you bleed. So if you need stability and security, you probably want Singularity Pro. We're committing to long-term support for several different releases of Singularity. And you get stability through backported bug fixes and features as a Singularity Pro subscriber. You also get advanced access to security patches. This is really important if you're helping to administer a large HPC system. So the way it works currently is if a security vulnerability comes out, we patch it, and then we make an announcement to the open source community that this patch is available and you have to update to the latest version of Singularity. If you're a Pro subscriber, we actually roll those patches out to you early. We don't tell you that they're security patches because we don't want that race to start between administrators and black hats, but you're already patched. By the time there's an announcement made, you're safe and you don't have to participate in that race that occurs between a malicious user and an admin. And finally, as a Pro subscriber, you get full access to the entire Sylabs cloud that I was talking about earlier. That's a freemium service. There are features that you might not have access to in the open source version, but as a Pro subscriber, you get access to all of it, and you also get the ability to host on-prem if you want to. Okay, so that's just a really quick whirlwind introduction to Singularity, what's new in Singularity 3.0, and what Sylabs has to offer. And so now I think I want to open it up, and we can talk a little bit in a panel discussion about those topics. Thanks very much.